In anime, character writing tends to follow a few easy to recognize patterns. You'll meet someone new, and within minutes, they're telling you about their dreams, or declaring their ideology mid-fight. Think someone like Asta trying to be the Wizard King, or Naruto saying he wants to be Hokage. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, some of my favorite shows live in that space. Larger than life personalities, big emotions, it's exciting, it's dramatic, and it makes for really good TV. But not every story needs to be shouted to be heard. Some characters don't win you over with their first appearance. They don't always explain themselves right away, and sometimes they don't explain themselves at all. Which brings me to Frieren Beyond Journey's End, a show that does things a little differently, because the characters in Frieren feel real, in a way most anime characters don't. They're quiet, subtle, sometimes hard to read, because they linger. Not because of flashy entrances or emotional speeches, but because they're allowed to just exist. So what makes these characters feel so real? Is it the writing, the performances, the way they're animated? Well, yes, but there are 3 big reasons I want to focus on today. The first is about restraint. The second is about time, and the third needs a little background first. But let's start with something simple. Frieren doesn't rush to tell you who its characters are. In most anime, you can figure out a character in seconds. They're loud, emotional, maybe they're defined by a single trait, like an angry swordsman. And again, that's not a bad thing. This kind of clarity is a feature. But Frieren does something different. Take Fern, for example. She's usually quiet and reserved. And if you've only watched the first episode, you might think she's the serious one of the group. But then you notice how she teases Frieren under her breath, or how she's always watching, taking care of things. Her emotions aren't hidden, they're just filtered. Or Stark, who looks like the typical cowardly comic relief character, but when he does fight, he's not always cool. Sometimes he's messy, and he's scared, and that's what makes him feel real. The show asks you to sit with these characters long enough to see who they are, not because they tell you, but because they show you. The show trusts them to just exist. And more importantly, it trusts us to pick up on who they are through these quiet moments. You can feel how much Frieren cares without her ever needing to say it. Moments when Frieren is examining magical artifacts mid-battle like no big deal, and Frieren glances over at her and raises an eyebrow. That's it. No yelling, no lecture, just that look. And somehow it says everything. It's dry, maybe annoying, but underneath it's quiet concern. You can tell they've been traveling for a long time. And then there's Stark. In his fight on episode 9, he's up against a demon, and he's terrified. Not just nervous, but physically shaking. But still, he steps forward and he still fights. The show doesn't speed past it or dramatize it. It lingers on his hesitation, and you're right there with him. He's scared, and he does it anyway. That moment, that gap between who he wants to be and who he really is, makes him feel painfully human. And then of course there's Frieren. You could blink and miss some of her biggest emotional shifts, but there's a scene where someone mentions Himmel, and just for a second, her face changes, her shoulders drop, her gaze shifts, and that's it. No big dramatic speech, no soft piano, but if you've been paying attention, it hurts, because you know what that name means to her, and the show knows you feel it too. And this kind of restraint only works because of one thing. Frieren gives its characters time, more than most shows are willing to. Now, another reason these characters feel so real is because they change. Not in the big season finale speech kind of way. It's slower than that, smaller, more lived in. The kind of growth that only stands out once you stop and look back. Like, for example, how long do you think Fern and Frieren have been traveling together? A few months, maybe years? The show never directly tells us. There's no bold time skip title card, no 3 years later montage. But somehow, by the time you get halfway through the season, you feel it. You feel the way Fern teases Stark, or how she effortlessly rolls her eyes at him, or calls him out with just the right amount of bite, and then you realize, oh, they've known each other for a while now. And then you remember how stiff and polite she was when they first met, or how Stark used to panic around Fern, and now he just grumbles back. This time slip feels real because it mirrors real life. People drift into comfort slowly. It's never announced, it just happens. And Frieren too, her changes are so small you might not even notice until someone else points it out, but they're there. Things like the way she compliments Fern's cooking, or jokes with Stark with a little smirk. Early on, she would have never done that. It's like watching someone slowly relearn how to care, even if they don't quite realize it themselves. It's all so subtle, and yet, when you stack it all together, it paints a bigger picture than any dramatic transformation arc ever could. What makes change feel real in Frieren is how quietly it happens. There are no big speeches announcing it, no flashbacks screaming for your attention. It's almost invisible. One day, Frieren, who shrugged off mortal timelines, is patiently waiting for someone while they pray. Now, these aren't character development milestones with triumphant music cues. They're just moments, small passing moments that don't seem to mean much until one day you look back and realize everything is different. Now, Frieren and Fern's dynamic evolves so gradually that it's only after you rewatch earlier episodes that you realize how much distance they've covered emotionally. They might speak softer now. Maybe they understand each other a little better. They take each other's presence for granted, in a way only people who've truly shared time truly can. And the show lets that transformation unfold without ever calling attention to it. And that restraint is powerful. Because in most anime, character change is often treated as a reward or a climax, something big and loud. But in Frieren, it's just the slow, patient unfolding of relationships across time. It's the shift in Fern's expression when she watches Stark fight, not admiration, but familiarity. It's Frieren watching Fern tease someone and seeing a flicker of the old party's energy return, unspoken but felt. And this kind of development doesn't just feel real, it feels earned, because Frieren isn't about transformation through force or revelation. It's about change through companionship, and that's what gives its characters weight. They grow like real people do, slowly and always in relation to the people walking beside them. And maybe that's why it sticks with you. Because by the time they've changed, it doesn't feel like a story arc. It just feels like time passed. You weren't witnessing a dramatic shift, you were just there. And so were they, quietly growing together. And that brings us to maybe one of the most important reasons these characters feel so real. It's because they're allowed to just exist. Now, here's the part that we kind of teased at the start, the one that doesn't sound impressive until you've seen everything leading up to it. Now, it's not about the animation quality, voice acting, or even dialogue. It's that Frieren lets its characters simply exist, not in an exaggerated way we're used to in anime, where every moment is just a sprint towards catharsis, but in a quiet, human way. They aren't always driven by plot, they aren't always learning their lessons, and sometimes they're just walking through a forest, bickering over simple things, like snacks. And in those moments, you stop seeing them as characters, you see them as people. It's subtle but powerful, because when a story slows down, we lean in. We start paying attention to the little things, the way Frieren stares a beat too long at an old landmark. These aren't big character moments, but they are deeply human ones. And what's wild is that you don't often notice how attached you've become until it sneaks up on you. The brilliance of it is that the characters don't always understand themselves, and the story lets that be true. That's rare. So many shows need their characters to be emotionally articulate for the audience sake, but Frieren doesn't. It trusts us to get it, to pick up on the half smiles or the awkward silences, the way someone lingers in a room just a little longer than they need to. And when those emotional threads finally tighten, when something does get said out loud, it lands with the weight of everything unsaid. It's not a reveal, it's a recognition. Now, I mentioned at the start that this reason might only become clear after you've seen the rest. Now that you've seen how the characters grow and change so naturally, it's easier to understand what Frieren truly does. It invites us to quietly share time with these characters. It's not the big moments or the flashy drama, but the feeling of having traveled alongside them. And that's why, in the end, their story feels less like fiction and more like a memory. What makes Frieren Beyond Journey's End stand apart in a landscape crowded with loud and over-the-top characters is its deliberate restraint. It challenges the conventions of anime storytelling by stripping away the need for constant spectacle, instead focusing on the nuance of human experience. Through this approach, it doesn't just tell a story, it deconstructs what it means to carry that weight of time. But by letting its characters exist without forcing conflict, Frieren crafts an emotional realism that is rarely seen in anime. The depth here is not flashy, but the space between them, like those silences, reveal inner lives. This show understands the power of subtlety and uses it masterfully to build characters who feel undeniably real. Ultimately, Frieren isn't about an elf traveling the world or fighting demons. It's about what remains after the battles are all over. How time reshapes us, how our relationships evolve, and how memories linger. The series invites us to witness not only a journey, but a meditation on existence itself. And that's why these characters resonate so deeply. Because in their quiet, unassuming way, they hold up a mirror to our own lives. So, as the story fades, we're not left with an explosive finale, but rather with a profound stillness, a testament to the power of restraint and reflection in storytelling. It's a reminder that sometimes the most unforgettable characters are those who don't demand our attention, but earn it quietly over time. In a world that often shouts for our attention, Frieren teaches us that the quietest stories, the ones told in moments between moments, are sometimes the most real, and the ones that stay with us the longest. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching this video. I really enjoyed the support on our last Frieren video, so I just knew I had to make another one. I'll probably make another one in the future again. Again, if you enjoyed this, please hit that like and subscribe. I feel like we're creating such a great community so fast. I love interacting with each and every one of you in the comments, so feel free to leave a comment with suggestions on how I can maybe improve, or just your thoughts on the overall video. But with that, peace.